Hoy tenemos con nosotros un personaje muy especial. Se llama Lara Maiklem. Ella es licenciada en Sociología y Antropología, pero en realidad su profesión actual es mudlarking, es decir, remover en el barro.
It took me quite a while. It took me a time to get to become a fully fledged mudlark. I moved to London in the 90s. I was brought up on a farm, somewhere very peaceful and quiet. But I was desperate to get to the craziness of the city. And when I got there, I found myself looking for peace and quiet. So I started looking in the parks and the gardens. I didn't find it there. And then one day I found myself down on the river and realizing that there was this beautiful streak of solitude that runs through the chaos of London, where I could escape from everything and everyone. And so for a number of years, I walked beside it. I walked for miles along the Thames path. And then one day I found myself standing at the top of some rickety wooden stairs, looking down onto the foreshore, which is basically the river bed, thinking, well, I'll go down and explore there. And I did, and I found my very first object, which was a piece of clay pipe. And I kept going back, and every time I went back, I found something new, and it soon became a bit of an obsession. And that was 20 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since.
Es una historia increíble que cuentas en tu libro Mudlarking, historias y objetos perdidos en el río Támesis, y unas cosas alucinantes, ¿no? Desde un diente de tiburón extinto.
The beauty of the Thames is that you never know what you're going to find next, and every tide will leave something behind, something different behind. So that's what keeps me coming back, this sort of I don't know what I'm going to find next sort of lucky dip of objects. The very oldest objects, as you say, are fossils. They're millions of years old. The very oldest man-made objects are prehistoric flints. And I've found some really weird and wonderful things. Probably the weirdest thing that I've found, though, is this. I think I can probably hold it up. It's fairly obvious what it is.
Esto parece...
What it is.
Sí, sí.
It's been seen by somebody at the British Museum.
Okay.
At the moment, they think that it's probably 18th or 19th century, and it was carved in China and brought back probably by a sailor or a merchant who was sailing between the two countries, and as a souvenir, probably. These kind of things, they date back to antiquity in China. This isn't a very old one. This was probably made as a souvenir. Now, whether he got back to London and he decided it was a little bit too risky to take home and threw it in the river, or his wife saw it and didn't like it and threw it in the river herself, we'll never know. But it is one of those mysterious objects. I'm still really researching it to find out a little bit more about it. But I do have all sorts of things. I don't know what a lot of things are that I find, and that's the beauty of mudlarking. It is the research afterwards that can sometimes take years.
¿Por qué las cosas se conservan tan bien en ese lodo?
Yeah, I mean, the objects that we find are things that have been lost and thrown away and forgotten about over, really 2,000 years, because, London's been intensely inhabited for 2,000 years. That's what makes the Thames such an amazing place to go mudlarking. There's so much stuff in there from all the people. And of course, the tides that go up and down twice a day that allow us to search for them. So the Thames mud also is unique because it's anaerobic, which means that there's no oxygen in there. And it's the oxygen that breaks down organic materials. So on land, the materials that on land would just break down and vanish over time, like wood and leather and bone, and to a certain extent fabric as well, can be perfectly preserved in the Thames mud.
Pero me imagino que también debes encontrar horrores como algún cadáver.
You do, sadly you do. The river is, it does draw people in, sad people who are desperate. And I think the statistics are out of 5 people that jump in every week in London, 1 person will drown. And so if you spend a lot of time by the river, you will eventually see the people who have drowned. And I've so far seen 3. One person I actually found floating and had to call in to the police. The other 2, the police had already arrived.
Lara, y ahora para ser mudlarking, o sea, removedor del barro, tienes que pertenecer a una sociedad y tener como una especie de permiso o carnet, ¿no?
Yes, you don't need to belong to a society, but you do need a permit. You can get your permit from the Port of London Authority. They're the landowners, and that gives you permission to go down and search. Now, anything you find, you don't actually own. It's still owned by the Port of London Authority, so it's illegal to sell anything that you find or trade it.
¿Para ti qué significa recorrer ese lodo, ese mundo?
It's a complete world. It's a complete world of its own. It's a world within a world, I suppose, in the city. It's a totally unique place. You're very aware that the city's going on around you. There are planes flying overhead and people walking across the bridges and beside you up on the river path. But when you're down there, you're completely alone with the river. I don't use a metal detector, and I don't dig and I don't scrape. It's not necessary to dig and scrape. Actually, when you're scraping, you're removing that top important layer where the fish spawn and the invertebrates live. So it's not good for the environment to scrape. And it's certainly not good to dig into the foreshore, because then you start to destabilize. It's a very fragile environment.
¿Qué has aprendido? ¿Qué te ha enseñado? ¿Qué te ha enseñado esta afición? ¿Qué te ha enseñado sobre la ciudad de Londres y sobre el ser humano?
I think the river has taught me a lot about us, about human beings. As I say, the river is a sad place. It draws people in. When I'm down there, I talk to it a lot. That sense of moving water, it takes away my problems. It takes away the things I don't want to think about, and I feel a lot better when I come away from it. So it draws people down to it to get rid of the things they don't want, the things that are causing them pain in their lives. We find wedding rings and engagement rings and torn up love letters and torn up photographs and, people's ashes. People gift to the river the things they don't want in their lives anymore. And people have been doing that for centuries. I found a 16th century posy ring last year, and it's got it's engraved on the inside. It's beautiful. But somebody 500 years ago was so desperate to get rid of that ring that they cut it off their finger. It's actually cut into it's got a great big cut in it. And they went down to the river and they threw it away in the way that people are still throwing away their wedding rings and engagement rings into the river. So I think what it's taught me more than anything else is that we don't change. We haven't changed. Human beings really are the same as they've always been, and as I think we'll always be. We'll always have the same fears and loves and sadness and hopes.
Muchísimas gracias, Lara, y felicidades por tu libro. Es magnífico. Gracias.
Thank you.